Welcome to episode 64 of the Family Answer Man podcast. We are answering your questions about dealing with suicide and suicide prevention today from a biblical worldview on the Family Answer Man podcast. Now, this is a serious and sensitive topic, so you may want to be aware of your listening audience and make sure that this topic is appropriate for everybody that's listening. You may want to circle back later on and catch this episode when the audience is appropriate and this is age-appropriate content. I am your host, David Orges. I am here with Dr. Mark Crosby, pastor, educator, marriage and family therapist, and resident expert on the Family Answer Man podcast, where we tackle tough questions that families face and discuss practical solutions that really do work. Now, this podcast is not a therapy session, and we're not able to give specific advice to your situations, but we do believe that mental and spiritual health are very serious issues, and family dynamics can be and often are very complicated. So, for in-depth answers to your questions, we encourage you to seek professional counsel specific to your unique circumstances. If you would right now, take a second to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode of the Family Answer Man. And if you're listening via podcast, take a moment to follow, to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. It really does help us out, and we appreciate it a lot. If our content has helped you at all, please share the Family Answer Man with your friends and your family so that they can join you on this journey of building stronger, healthier, and happier families. Well, Dr. Mark, it's good to be here with you today.
Yes.
And again, this is for our listening audience, this is a little disclaimer. It's a very serious, sensitive topic.
It is.
May not be age appropriate for everyone that would be maybe in the car listening.
That's right.
So if you're listening today, to pause this, circle back to it later on. It is a very serious topic, but it's also a very important topic.
Yes.
And as always, we don't shy away from the difficult questions, from the difficult topics, and we want to address this from a biblical worldview.
Right.
Suicide and suicide prevention.
Yeah, this is the month of September, as we know, and of course, because of that, this is also Suicide Prevention Month. And the reason why I think that's so important is because the reality is most all of us know someone who has taken their life. For some, it's very personal. Maybe it was a child or a spouse or a close friend or a parent or grandparent. Because the reality is suicide is far more prevalent than we realize. Depending on the stats that you read, some will argue that there's a suicide that occurs every 11 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there is a lot that we need to talk about concerning the subject, how to prevent, what signs to look for, what to be aware of, what to do in the event that you or someone you love begins to go down this road, if you will, of darkness, because it is a very dark road. It's a road that many go down when they feel life is hopeless, that they are depressed, that there is no hope. It occurs during some serious changes in life, changes that maybe they were not expecting, or changes that brought some real severe trauma to their life. And so the reality is that it happens more frequently. It happens to people that we never expected it to happen to, people that we thought had it all together. They had everything going for them. They had all of the amenities of life, lots of money, lots of fame, lots of fortune, lots of opportunity, good looks. The list could go on. But for some reason, life became very dark, very depressing, and very painful, and they went down this road. And it causes confusion, as we'll talk about in a few moments, to families, to friends. The major question is why? Why did this happen? Why them? Why did they go down this road? Why didn't they talk to me? Why didn't I answer the phone when they called? Why didn't I see the signs? And the list could go on. And so it not only affects the person, of course, who has taken their life, but it also affects everyone that they're associated with.
Yeah.
Every family member, every friend, every person that's ever cared about them, loved them, knew them, etc. It impacts them on some level. Yeah. So this is something that we need to talk about. It's something that we don't talk about enough, unfortunately, but it's something we need to talk about, especially during this month of September.
Yeah, and as you said, it's something that we don't talk a lot about and probably have not talked about enough.
Right.
It is a dark road. Is there hope?
Of course, there's always hope. And the more we, I think, bring light to this darkness, the greater the hope's going to be.
Nice.
I think the one thing that we don't do enough of is expose the darkness, the dark secrets of our life, the dark secrets of our thoughts, the dark secrets of our actions. We love to play let's pretend. And unfortunately, we play that game well on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Let's pretend. Let's pretend everything's good, everything's right, everybody's in a good mood, everybody's in a good place, everybody has it all together. And the moment we start becoming authentic and real and begin to expose the darkness of our heart, of our life, of our mind, of our situations, when we expose that darkness to the light, that is when things, again, start getting better and the hope becomes a reality.
Well, there we go. I think that is a great way to start off, and a good explanation and groundwork that we have laid for this question.
Sure.
The question that came in is, it reads this. It says, our extended family has experienced 3 suicides in 3 years.
Wow.
An older male in his 50s after losing his job and a marriage, a female in her 20s after struggling with addiction, and a male in his late teens who always seems sad. It says, the writer says, I'm worried that we miss the signs and clues. What should we do to be aware and to prevent this from happening again?
Well, again, it's amazing to note that all 3 of these individuals they lost meet what I would call the textbook criteria for those who commit suicide. Middle-aged men who are in major changes of life, whether it be, again, the loss of a job or the loss of a marriage or things of that nature, maybe even a retirement. But when they go through a major change in life and they've lost their identity, they've lost their purpose, they've lost their standing in the community, they've lost their reason to get up each morning and go to work, whatever it may be, when they've lost their sense of credibility, when they lost, again, their sense of what am I to do with my life, when they've lost that, many feel like they have no reason or purpose in living. And so many times middle-aged men, especially middle-aged white men, will go down this path. Also, the next person you mentioned was the female in her 20s who struggled with addiction.
Yeah.
Addiction of all sorts, alcohol addiction, various drug addictions, again, contribute to the suicidal ideation and then eventually the suicidal act. And then a teen who's always sad. Maybe they're sad because they've been bullied. Maybe things didn't go well. Maybe they didn't make the team. Maybe they're not part of the cool group or whatever it may be. But whatever happens is they feel sad, isolated, and alone. And sometimes for a teenager that is so painful, they basically feel that life is not worth living. Yeah. Why should I bother going on in life? Why no one cares, no one's interested, no one wants me, why am I even here? And those ideations, again, evolve into these this very terrible act of suicide. So the problem is this, I will argue that suicide is not something, as we said earlier, that we like to talk about.
Right. It is something that we try to avoid. It's not a pleasant topic.
Right. And for some people, if we don't talk about it, it means it won't happen. And that's not necessarily true. The reality is for some people, it's a stigma that we're to avoid. It's something we don't like to address, something we don't think will ever happen to us or to our family, to our kids or to our spouse or to our parents. But it's something, therefore, that, again, we need to talk about. But because of the stigma attached to it, many times we don't. It's something we don't like to address in the churches. I don't want to, again, be critical per se of our pastors and our churches because our community has great pastors and great churches. But the question still remains, when was the last time you heard a sermon on suicide? Yeah. When was the last time you heard a sermon on how to prevent suicide? When was the last time you heard a sermon on, what to look for in the issue of suicide? Even though one of the most famous of all the apostles, according to Dr. John MacArthur, was Judas Iscariot.
Right.
Now, again, he was one of the most famous because of what he said and what he did, the betrayer of Jesus. But at the end of his story, he takes his own life.
Right.
Now, again, as we have said before, here's a man who followed Jesus for 3 years. He saw miracles that no one in this listening audience has ever seen, okay? He heard the words, he saw the events, he was involved, he was a part of the management of the money. I mean, this guy was a follower of Jesus. As Mark and Matthew referenced him, he was one of the 12.
Right.
He was one of the 12. That's how they referenced. He was one of the 12. And so how is it that he got to such a point in life to where not only was he able to betray Jesus,
right,
but then he doesn't go back to Jesus for hope like Peter does. And so he takes his life. And so here is a person that, again, you have to ask yourself, if that could happen to Judas Iscariot,
right,
someone who followed Jesus for 3 years, who heard the teaching, who was a part of Jesus' community, okay? He was a part of Jesus' small group, okay? Who heard these things, who saw these things, who heard about grace and love, and who saw Jesus forgive time and time again and cast out demons. If it would happen to him, then the reality is it could happen to anybody.
Yeah.
Now, we don't like to think in those terms.
Right.
And I know there's someone out there listening who just said to themselves or the person they're driving with,
Not me.
Never
Not
happened
me.
to me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't happen to me. Yeah, it could. Okay.
Right.
And so the point is this. As a matter of fact, over 800,000 people worldwide commit suicide.
Wow.
800,000 people worldwide commit suicide, more than all the homicides and natural disasters combined.
Wow.
So that's important to note. In 2021, there were over 48,000 suicides in the U.S. In 2021, over 48,000. Now, again, we have to be reminded that that was in the height of the COVID pandemic.
Right.
Okay. But what's worse is this. 12.3 million people in the U.S. gave suicide some serious thought.
Wow.
3.5 million planned it. 1.7 million people attempted it. And now, because of the level of suicide, or the rate, if you will, it was the second leading cause of death for ages, hear this, from ages 10 to 14.
Wow.
The second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 14, and also the second leading cause of death for ages 20 to 34. So again, the reality is age doesn't matter, race doesn't matter, ethnicity doesn't matter, socioeconomic status doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, the people who seem to have it all together, as far as success, as far as being financially stable, as far as being popular, have committed suicide. I mean, some of the key people, if you will, in the last several years that has come to mind, Naomi Judd.
Right.
Most of our listening audience have listened to the Judds, at least on a couple of occasions. Some churches have sung their song, Love Can Build a Bridge, okay? So there's Naomi Judd, Anthony Bourdain, the famous chef.
Right.
For those who maybe grew up in the 80s and 90s, Kurt Cobain. Those who used to watch Mork and Mindy back in the 70s and 80s, and of course other movies, Robin Williams.
Yeah.
So the reality is it doesn't matter your financial status, doesn't matter how much you have done, doesn't matter your level of success. So the big question is, how do we prevent it?
Yeah.
How does one prevent suicide? Or put another way, as this person was asking in their question, what do we look for?
Right. Are there any flags or indicators or warning signs?
Exactly. And so the first thing we have to be mindful of is what's called suicidal ideations. So a therapist, and I'm hoping the pastors who are listening will be mindful of this, but suicidal ideations are generally the first indicator that someone is going down this road. And what a suicidal ideation is that's just a fancy word for a suicidal thought or statement. When you hear someone say, I wish I weren't here. I wish I could just not wake up. Or if they say things, I just wish I could die. Or they say things like, I'm just so hopeless in life, there's no hope for me. Or someone says, I don't feel like living anymore.
I wish I never would have been born.
I wish I never would have been born.
Yeah.
Those kind of statements are ideations that should cause a person to perk up and listen, because these are thoughts, these are ideas, these are statements that are bringing a person down the road that could lead to the act of suicide. Charles Haddon Spurgeon, for the pastors who are listening, you'll know that name. For Charles Haddon Spurgeon, who was considered the prince of pastors in the 1800s, simply said time and time again that his depression got so bad that he often wanted to just jump off a bridge. And sometimes he would say he would avoid walking over a bridge for the fear that his suicidal ideations and his depression would be so great that he would jump. Now, here is a man who is called the Prince of Pastors.
Right, and has a legacy that is well-known and diverse.
And who's influenced hundreds, if not thousands of pastors, over the decades. So for all my pastor friends who are listening, if you feel like, hey, I am beyond that would never happen to me, I just want to say, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, you've never been called the Prince of Pastors. But the Prince of Pastors has had this problem. So again, what I'm saying is beware of being smug, being prideful. Beware of saying this would never happen to me, because for the one who says that generally is an indicator that this is going to happen to you.
Yeah.
So what happens is this. It happens to 98% of all people who suffer with major depression. 98% of all people who suffer with major depression have these thoughts and ideations. But when ideations persist, in other words, if you feel like you've lost control, if you feel like there is no hope, if you feel like there's no one you can reach out to, then that is when I want to encourage people who are listening to please call your doctor, to please call your pastor, to please call your counselor, or to please call 988.
988, what's that?
988 is a suicide hotline. It is like 911, but it's specifically for those who are having suicidal thoughts, ideations, maybe even plans. So please call 988. Again, for the pastors who are listening, for the Christian counselors who are listening, have that number ready to give out.
Right.
988, it's the suicide hotline, and it can help people help prevent people from doing something that, again, would be devastating to them and to everyone.
Yeah, the suicide hotline used to be an 800 number. It's really difficult to memorize. This is a great resource.
988. I'll say it again. 988 is the number you want to call. So again, if someone starts telling you they have a plan, that is when you have to act now immediately. Why? Because when a person says, I have a plan, this is what I'm going to do. I know where the gun is. I know where the pills are. I know where the rope is. I know when my parents are going to be gone. When someone says, I have a plan, that is when you get them to the hospital.
Yeah, the thoughts have elevated and you're at a new threat level.
A new threat level. You've now gone to Mach 5, if you will. New threat level. Get them to a hospital. Most hospitals have a COPE team. If nothing else, get them to the ER, to the emergency room. But the reality is you now have to get them to the hospital. Why? Because most will act on that plan. That is their next step. The plan, but the next step after that plan is to act on the plan. So you must get them to the hospital as quickly as possible. So what are some of the warning signs? Again, that seems to be the question that many are asking. What are the warning signs? So for those who would like to, again, remember the warning signs, I'm going to use the acronym FACTS.
Okay, FACTS.
FACTS, the acronym FACTS, FACTS. So when a person is feeling hopeless, the letter F, the person is feeling hopeless, feeling worthless, feeling that they don't want to go on with life, feeling that there is no answer to their dilemma, feeling that no one cares. But when there's that feeling of hopelessness, worthlessness, loss of purpose, loss of connection, but when those feelings become that great or that overwhelming, that is a warning sign you need to be careful and mindful of. Number 2, actions. If they don't own a gun, but they purchase a gun, when they start behaving recklessly, when they start giving things away. And this is especially true of our teenagers. Yeah. When a teenager or even a preteen unfortunately says, "Hey, or take my bike, or take my Nintendo, or take my, my football, or take care of my dog, or take care of my pets, or take care of my goldfish," whatever it may be, when they start giving things away, that is a sign, that is an action to be mindful of. When they disconnect from family and friends, when their friends come over or their family calls them or their family says, "Hey, let's do this," or "Go here," or "Come over," and they disconnect. They don't accept the invitation. They don't come over like they used to. They are hard to reach. They don't answer their phone. So when they're disconnecting from family and friends. When they start drinking excessively. or when they start, abusing, if you will, their prescription meds. This is, again, an action that you need to be careful of. Self-harming behavior. When you're noticing that they are maybe cutting or they are doing something that is self-harm, that is when you need to be mindful and be aware. The letter C, if you're following this acronym, F, feelings, A, action, C, changes. When you see changes in their mood, they used to be happy-go-lucky, they used to be, carefree and fun, but now they're very just depressed and sad and not willing to connect. Bad hygiene, when you can, see or sense that they have not taken a bath, they have not combed their hair, they have not, put on some clean clothes in days. That is also something to be mindful of. The letter T is threats.
Real quick, with changes too, I think sometimes if somebody has been in a very depressed state and all of a sudden they're very happy,
that's something to be mindful of.
That's another change.
Yeah. When all of a sudden, out of the blue, they go from this deep depression till this very, very quick pendulum change to I'm a good place now. That can mean they have made a decision that is going to be very dreadful.
Right. And one of the temptations is to say, oh, they got better.
Right.
And not realize that that can be a sign.
Exactly. So that's a good point. The letter T in this acronym is threats. Again, statements like, I'm done with living, or they post things on social media. That's something, too, that we have to be careful of. When they post things on social media that are very cryptic, very dark, be careful and beware of that as well. And then last of all, when situations are very overwhelming, a personal loss, such as the loss of a job, in some cases, the loss of kids, maybe in a custody dispute, a person loses their children or things of that nature. When a spouse files for divorce or walks away, or in some cases for teenagers when it's your junior or senior year and your family moves away. And you go to a new school and there are no friends and there's nobody who cares and you can't play on the football team because of their new rules and regulations, and you've lost and left everything behind that you once knew. So these are all areas that we have to be mindful of. And in that period of uncertainty between the event that has occurred and the time that they really do get a better grasp on life, in that period of uncertainty is when you're more likely to have the ideations or even the plan or even the attempt.
Yeah, just to run down those again: feelings of hope, actions, changes, threats, and situations, and especially heightened in the time of uncertainty.
Exactly. So during that period of uncertainty, you have to be careful. So the big question is, so what do you do? Number one, you respond. You cannot take lightly what you're seeing. Respond. You say, what's going on? Where are you? Listen to them, talk to them, be present, but you have to respond. Number two, very similar, get involved. Sit down with them, invite them over, you say, you are coming with me, we are going to go, and get something to eat or whatever. Make some changes in your own home. If it's your spouse or your kids, you may need to pick up the guns. You may need to lock the medication behind the medicine cabinet. Get others involved. Again, call your pastor, call their counselor, call their physician, call their pediatrician, call their youth minister, whomever it may be, to get them involved, to come over and listen and talk and pray and encourage and put their arms around them and all these things. Don't leave them alone. Next, again, as we said before, call 988, or in some cases, if it gets worse, then you call 911 and you get the proper care to them via ambulance, etc. So who's most at risk? That's the next question people are often asking, and I think this is one of the questions that we heard today. Yeah. Who's most at risk? Anyone who's going through moderate to severe depression is at risk. So a person who's going through moderate to severe depression is at risk for suicide. Again, about 98%, and some will even argue 100% of people who have moderate to severe depression will have at least suicidal ideations. Number two, those who have moderate to severe anxiety. when life is very painful and they're very anxious and they're not sure where to go or what to do. Thirdly, when there's conflict in relationships, when a person is going through a divorce, when a person is going through a custody battle, when a person feels like they are no longer welcomed, in their fill in the blank, in their family of origin or in their in-laws' home or whatever it may be. Fourthly, when there's abuse, when there's sexual abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse going on in a home, then that is when a person is most at risk. Again, as we said earlier, when you have lost a relationship, you realize that he's never coming back, she's never coming back, or maybe they have passed away. There is that deep grief that causes a person to think these thoughts and go in this direction. When you're confused about life, especially when you're a teenager, you're confused about your identity, you're confused about your purpose, you're confused about where you fit in. These are all risk factors. When a person is being bullied, bullying is a leading cause, unfortunately, of suicidal behaviors and ideations. So bullying is something we have to be very, very careful of, especially in our schools. So for the teachers who are and the principals who are listening right now, beware of bullying and what it can potentially lead to. As we said already, alcohol and drug abuse. Those who are involved in alcohol abuse, drug abuse, they're more at risk for suicide. Again, domestic violence. When there is a chronic domestic violence, not just between the parents, but among other children as well. If you have family history of suicide, you're at a higher risk factor. And again, when you're not taking it seriously, when you're a person who doesn't take it seriously, when you're a person who doesn't think this is going to happen to your family, this is not going to happen to you, that's for weak people, whatever. When you put yourself in that scenario, you are now putting yourself at risk. Yeah. So what does it do? What does suicide do? Real quickly, it creates a permanent reality to a temporary problem. I'll say that again. It creates a permanent reality to a temporary problem. We need to tell people, whatever problem you're going through, it's only temporary. We can work on it, we can get it better, we can help heal it, we can fix it, we can overcome it, but it's temporary. Suicide creates a permanent reality to a temporary problem. Number two, you're putting matters into your own hands. And whenever you put matters into your own hands, just like Judas Iscariot, you're going to mess things up. Turn it over to God, turn it over to professionals, turn it over to others who can help you to resolve what's going on in your life. It terribly impacts everyone you love and everyone who loves you. It impacts everyone you love and everyone who loves you. It is the greatest regret, as people have testified who have survived suicide attempts. There has been research of those who have survived suicide attempts of those who've jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. And 90% of those who survived it, which is very few, but those who did, said the same thing. As we were about to hit the water, we wished that we would not have done this. We wish we could live. We wish we could have changed. Wow. Not only that, it creates a domino effect as others may follow your lead. So beware of that. If you're thinking about suicide, beware that you could be creating a domino effect that others may follow your lead. And last of all, it devastates family. Real quickly, with the time we have, to the church and to the pastors, real quickly, be ready for this. It's going to happen in your church. It's going to happen in your community. Number two, know the hotline. Know 988. Know the hotline. Number three, know the hospitals that treat this. Lady of the Lakes, Cope Center, any ER, but know where your hospitals are. Fourthly, pastors, be approachable. This is very serious, and you're the first line of defense for suicide prevention. And then fifthly, let God's grace be the foundation of hope in this situation. God's grace is amazing, and if you turn this over to Him, build on His grace, you too can help prevent suicide.
Well, there you have it from the Family Answer Man. We want to thank you for joining us today for this discussion on a very serious and sensitive topic. We hope, as always, that the Family Answer Man has encouraged you and helped to inspire you to make changes that will lead to a stronger, healthier, happier family.